Hello, this is Call My Bluff, the Bond Street version of Crown and Anchor, featuring Frank Muir.
Well done. My first guest is an actress, but I must add a male chauvinist guinea pig remark. And so, she's also very feminine and very beautiful and a lovely actress, and it's Gayle Hunnicutt. And as a change, my next guest is economics editor of The Times, but he's also a multi-award-winning presenter of London Weekend's Weekend World, Peter J. Good evening.
And the man from the land of the little people, Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. On the programme nationwide, you have often seen the lovely features of my first guest talking to you through a kind of porthole from the city of Norwich. Now, here is the whole of the upper half of our Susanne Hall. And my other guest was an absolute beast of a Nazi Gauleiter in the Colditz story, but here he is his own genial self, Mr. Anthony Valentine.
I think we should begin, don't you? I'll ring the bell, and we have the first word, censure. Censure. You pronounce it all different ways, I don't doubt. Frank Muir and his team are going to define this word 3 different ways. 2 are false, 2 are the definitions, 1 is true. That's the one that Patrick and company are going to try and pick out. So what about this word, Frank?
Censure is a thick hedge. It's not an intelligent hedge. It's a dense hedge. That doesn't help much, does it? It's thick and almost impenetrable, and a particular sort of hedge which has got brambles and bits sticking out of it. So terribly difficult to get your way through. You may recall Mr. Chaucer, an earlyish poet, writing in the Parliament of Fools, "Gallant was he as goldfinch in his censure."
Is that a goldfish in a hedge?
No,
you're trying to confuse everyone.
A slip of the tongue, Mr. Robinson.
Beg your pardon, Mr. Muir. Shall we proceed? Peter.
Censure. Well, censure means very much what you would expect it to mean, especially if you're a seafaring type. It is, of course, an iron lodging knee that is fitted with a webbed brace. And in case you wonder what it actually does, it's frightfully important in ships because it eases the strain on the bolts which hold the deck planking to the ribs in a ship when it's rolling. If, of course, you're seasick at the time, you may not notice this important function, but it's frightfully important because otherwise the ship might break up and you might then be drowned.
Right, so that's what it means according to you. Now, Gayle Hunnicutt.
Well, thanks to Frank's very flattering male chauvinist guinea pig introduction, I'm very pleased to tell you that censure is in fact a diaphanous, very feminine, very wispy fabric, which is used in making bridal veils, butterfly nets, and in fact tea bags. It is, of course, a Chinese word, which the English have mispronounced and misspelled. It's actually xian shaw, which, of course, as you know, is Chinese for gauze thread. Of course.
So that's what they said. It's a ship, kind of a bracket on a ship holding the ship together, kind of a fabric, and a hedge often crammed to the rafters with goldfish. Patrick.
Finch. That's what I heard, too.
I think he did mean Finch, yes.
Jotting here is goldfish in unintelligent hedge. Now, that's a great help. But it certainly isn't anything to do with the ship. That awful jangled nonsense about iron bars holding ships' bolts together. It isn't that, and it isn't a goldfish in an unintelligent hedge, I don't think. I believe it's a kind of... No, I don't. I think it's a goldfish in an unintelligent hedge.
I wonder if you've chosen right. That was what you said, Frank, wasn't it? You didn't mean it, perhaps, but maybe you did. True or bluff?
Well, if you get it right.
One on a technical knockout there, didn't he? Yes. But who gave the true definition of the word? Need to know that.
Of course, it had
There. It's this delightful fabric that Patrick nearly chose, but not quite. Tubbo is the next word, and it's Patrick's go.
It's an unattractive blemish on the skin of a sufferer from a terrible tropical disease called the yaws, Y-A-W-S. And the chief symptoms are blotches all over the face. You get hundreds of them, and each of them looks like a freshly picked raspberry. That's a tubbo. Each freshly picked raspberry is called a tubbo. All over everything.
Nothing like a good disease for getting a laugh on this show, that's what I say. Anthony Valentine, your turn.
Tubbo, in the language of an Australian sheep shearer, is the last sheep of a flock of sheep to be sheared. And apparently there is a superstition amongst Australian sheep shearers that to shear the last sheep, all right, is unlucky. Therefore, the avoidance of this practice is known as dodging the tubbo.
All righty. Suzanne Hall, your go.
I just wonder if the sheep had that peculiar raspberry complaint. I was beginning to wonder whether I was coming out in the yaws. No, a tubbo is a sort of mini iceberg. In fact, it's really still joined to the iceberg, but underneath the water, so that a mariner coming along could be under the impression that there was plenty of room for him to get between iceberg and the tubbo, and should he try, there will be a very nasty crunch and a titanic disaster.
Well, it's a very unpleasant blemish indeed. It's part of an iceberg, and it's the last sheep to be shorn by a superstitious Australian. Frank?
Part of iceberg, part of the 9/10 you don't see.
I didn't say anything about 9/10, but you can't actually see it. You can't see the join.
Or the last, I don't think it could be Australian, because they don't normally add an E on the end of things like smoko, which means a small break for light refreshment, and a smoko is just the O. I don't think you add an E on the end of it. But as for Patrick's face coming out in 100 ripe raspberry, sooner yours than mine, I think it's, without question, Patrick.
Ah, Patrick spoke, didn't he, about all that stuff. True or bluff, Patrick? Don't want to harp on it, but tubbo is all that he said it was, that kind of disease, the blemish of the disease. Bonner's the next word. Peter J.
Well, gentlemen, in the naughty 90s, young gentlemen at the more ancient universities in this country were very keen on bonners. It is, of course, slang for a bonfire. And in case you don't believe me, you can actually look it up in your bedside reading, and a copy of the Oxford magazine for May of 1898, where you will read the following doggerel. While the bonner burns, make haste to pass, the revellers fireworks scattered on the grass.
Someone must have made that up, mustn't they? Gayle, your turn.
Well, I have another feminine definition. Mine is a bonner is the jovial wife of an equally jovial innkeeper. The name for the smiling spouse of the usual apple-cheeked jolly publican, a type of lady still occasionally seen but more often replaced by a rather beady barmaid who simply shouts out, "Time, gentlemen, please, all out."
You're dwelling in the past, my dear. Frank, it's your turn.
Have you ever considered the problem of running a windmill? Because it is absolutely vital to running a windmill that the sails
I thought so.
point towards the wind. Because if the wind veered round the back, you you then suck up all the flour and sort of reconstitute it into wheat. You see. It's vital to the process of flour making that it goes the right way. So what do? You see, you have a bonner, which is a kind of, I suppose you might call it a sail, a bit of sort of canvassy thing wrapped around a thing, which fits on the back of the windmill and acts rather like a weathercock and points those sails into wind.
Lovely.
A bonner.
Lovely. Well, it's a slang term for a bonfire. It's a jolly innkeeper's wife, or an innkeeper's jolly wife, and it's a windmill sail. Anthony Valentine, your choice.
I've never heard anything so Heath Robinson as sails and sucking up flour and spewing it out. Yes. I'm even more reluctant, actually, with this a jolly good bonner and revellers and fireworks in the grass. 19th century? And only fireworks in the grass? An innkeeper's wife. That seems unlikely, too, that anyone should refer to it. No, I've got to come back to the Heath Robinson. I think it is a sail at the back of a windmill for keeping it pointing in the right direction.
Might give him the chance to do it again if we're lucky. Frank, true or bluff?
I'm afraid they're looking rather happy.
But it's not.
No, nothing to do with the windmill. We need to know who gave the true definition. It's there somewhere. I know it is. There, do you see? Old-fashioned undergraduate term for a bonfire. And now we have the word kilch, and it's, Anthony, it's your turn.
A kilch is a wooden milking pail used in the west of Scotland and in the Hebrides. The description given in the dictionary would seem to suggest that in England that we would simply refer to it as an ordinary wooden milking pail, but in the west of Scotland and the Hebrides they refer to it as a kilch, a fact which we have to accept.
Yep. Susanne?
A kilch is a fish, and it's only found on the shores of Lake Constance in Switzerland. Now, it's a great delicacy around the shores of Lake Constance, and people eat it. They find it quite delicious, and it tastes rather like trout, but the only thing is it's a bit, you do get an awful lot of sort of bones, which rather puts some people off buying it a lot.
Trout.
Probably.
Patrick, your go.
Kilch is a kind of graphite which is mined around Otterbourne in Northumberland. Now, it isn't your average black graphite, it's more steely grey in colour, with the result that it cannot be used for making the lead in lead pencils or for shoe polish. Consequently, the wise miners of Kilch, they added to lubricating oils to make the oils lubricate more quickly and smoothly and easily.
Well, you've got to do something with it, that's true. It's Cumberland graphite. It's a milking pail, and it's a sort of fish that you find on the in the Lake of Constance, yes. Peter?
Well, I shall proceed on the basis of Sherlock Holmes, because he's a jolly good detective, and he said that when you've eliminated everything else, whatever remains must be the truth. The trouble is that I've eliminated all three. But I think two are slightly more improbable than the third. I'm dubious about this wooden milking pail in the west coast of Scotland and the Hebrides. It sounds too much like kilt to me to be another Scottish word. And I'm also very sceptical about this graphite in Otterbourne. I thought Otterbourne was in Hampshire, not in Northumberland. Of course, maybe two.
It's Northumberland.
Maybe two Otterbournes, but the one I know is in Hampshire. So I think, improbable though it may be, that there should be something between a kipper and a trout on the shores of Lake Constance, and on the principle of never disbelieving a lady, I'll go for the fish.
Well thought out, well reasoned. Susanne Hall, true or bluff?
Alas.
A bullseye. It's the fish. It's the fish. Indeed, it's a fish. 4-0, my goodness me. My goodness me. Andaroon is the next word, and it's Gayle Hunnicutt's turn.
I have yet another feminine definition. This time, my feminine definition is about an andaroon, which is a place which I'm very sorry to say most of you gentlemen would never be found, because it is the anteroom of the Persian harem. with a private chamber where the ladies wait of the Shah's menage, whiling their time away playing ping-pong and embroidering. They wait there until the Shah has the envious pleasure of inviting them to his company.
Splendid, nice girls, all of them. Frank, it's your turn.
Anderoan. Anderoan, tin, finger, ointment, unguent, perhaps. It's an elderly kind of ointment, chief ingredient of which is cobwebs. It was known to the Phoenicians and was meant to stop bleeding.
Yeah, yes, very good. Excellent. And now we have Peter J. It's your turn.
Anderoon, a sacred baboon, worshipped by the Ubishara, a strange sect of tree dwellers in Nepal. They worship it because it has the exceptional property, which has hitherto defeated human scientists, of managing to be in 2 or even 3 places at the same time.
So there you have it. It's a mad monkey, if I've got it right. It's sort of an ointment, and it's a very respectable part of a harem where they fill in time, as it were. Susanne.
Well, I'm flummoxed. The sacred baboon, which is so elusive it can't be found, I think perhaps we could leave that an elusive away. I can't believe that. Now then, the Persian room for the ladies of the harem, I didn't know that the Shah of Persia had a harem. I thought that he was very faithful to his wife. And I didn't know that the ladies of a Persian harem would play ping-pong, did you?
Never.
No. So I think I must go for the ointment which perhaps could be anointed on the sufferers of Patrick's raspberry blemishes, and I think, Frank, it is yours.
It is indeed. Frank, own up, saucebox.
It's another bluff, isn't it?
I wonder if this is going to be, is it a white, I never get the right word. Whitewash?
whitewash.
Yeah, I wonder, who knows. Let's have the true definition.
Ping pong wins the day.
So, that, goodness, well, there you are. 5-0 at the moment. Calendar is the next word. Susanne Hall, define
yes.
it.
Yes, indeed. A calendar is a wooden pin which is used for fastening stob thatch. Now, stob thatch is quite different to ordinary sort of Norfolk reed thatching because it's a mixture of clay and thatch. You'll probably all know, you're familiar with stob thatching. Now, it was so named after its inventor, who was a very splendid gentleman called Benjamin Calendar, and the information comes from his gravestone. It's inscribed on it, as well as the words R.I.P., in Axminster, Devon.
Patrick, yes.
The Calendar is a Mediterranean skylark. It flies about all over the air of the Mediterranean, sometimes touching upon North Africa, sometimes even coming as far as the Côte d'Azur. But it's much bigger and plumper than the English skylark. It's got quite a chest on it. Of course, not the size of a turkey, you understand. And it's the great size of its chest, comparatively speaking, that gives the skylark, this kind of skylark, the Calendar, its almost baritone voice. What's the...
I was just thanking my lucky stars that you weren't Frank Muir, otherwise you would certainly have sung it or done something,
Yes.
like that. But, Anthony, it's your turn.
A calendar is a slope in a horse's training area, training ground, down which the animal is ridden at speed, not excessively, in order to bring it on to the bit. Undoubtedly, Her Royal Highness would know why it had to be brought onto the bit. Alas, I don't. But if you have one that needs bringing on, then you need one of these, a calendar.
Well, it's a slope. It's a slope that you run horses down. It's a big fat skylark in the Mediterranean, and it's a thatching pin. Gayle Hunnicutt.
Well, now, being American, I don't know a great deal about thatching. I'm going to leave that for a minute. It was a very convincing definition. Therefore, I'm very, yes, I'm a bit worried. It was a bit too convincing. I didn't quite understand. I mean, it sounded so feminine, this chesty bird, and then it had this baritone voice. I was rather thrown by that. And I don't know. I somehow found that it quite well might be a slope in the ground, and that Her Royal Highness just might know what to do with it. So I'm going to vote for that.
You vote for that. You vote for Anthony Valentine. That's true or bluff? They've broken their duck. Nothing whatever to do with the slope for horses. Who gave the true definition?
Tweet, tweet.
It's just what he says. It's that Skylark 5-1. I would have been very sad if you hadn't broken your duck there. Salta or salta, Frank?
It's a kind of Portuguese offensive weapon. It's a kind of sandbag. You know those sandbags shaped rather like a garlic sausage? Not one of those that soldiers crouch behind, you know, or they put up to stop the Thames overflowing into Europe. It's a thing you slug, and it used to be made from eel skins.
Yes. Peter J.
Well, if Sarah Bernhardt was on the panel on the other side, she'd know what it was, because she used to play it. In fact, she was rather good at it. It is a sort of jumbo halma, only instead of having 64 squares on the board, you have 100 squares on the board. And it's a fairly new game. It's been played most of this century. Indeed, in 1901, the first, I think, international salta tournament was played.
Seems feasible. Gayle?
Well, I'm rather sad that Frank isn't giving this definition, because it's something he probably would exhibit for you. I will not. It is
You have already.
It is a Neapolitan dance of a very sprightly nature, which calls for extravagant skips and jumps by couples taking part, although it is of Spanish origin, although it's a Neapolitan dance, having been introduced to Naples in the 16th century when it was being governed by the Spanish viceroys.
You're quite right, he would have done, Gayle.
I know,
He would have
I know.
done. Well, it's a Neapolitan dance, Frank Muir didn't do. It's a loaded sandbag, and it's a kind of big game of halma. And it's Patrick's turn.
It seems to be so odd to have a sandbag covered with eel skin. It's not all that tough, is it, an eel skin? Because a big, tough eel skin.
I think I'll have to hurry you along.
It's the right shape. Well, yeah, I beg your pardon, yes, I was thinking to myself pretty well. It isn't a dance, it's a halma. A kind of superior large game of halma.
Peter, you said that. True or bluff, was it? The bullseye.
Yeah.
So there you are. That just right in the nick of time, you scored another point, because this word does indeed mean the sort of halma he described. So the score standing at 5-2. Nonetheless, Frank Muir's team has won. Well, I'm sure we all hope that next week we'll be shaking out some more technical hitches from the Oxford English Dictionary. And until then, goodbye from Peter J. Goodbye. Anthony Valentine. Gayle Hunnicutt. Susanne Hall. Frank Muir. Patrick Campbell. And goodbye.
Fingers on buzzers, entertainment awaits with BBC iPlayer's Game Shows collection.